right, so we will get started with today's webinar. Welcome everyone. My name is Danny Lauer. I am the Assistant Director and Coordinator of the Dalton Alumni Career Resources here at the Grand Valley Career Center. So if you haven't done so yet, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know your name, your grad year, and why you're interested in today's session. We are hosting this webinar today in partnership with Alumni Relations, and together we're committed to supporting all of our Grand Valley alums in their lifelong learning, professional growth. Programs like this are just one way that we get to do that. So I am very pleased to introduce our webinar facilitator today, Dr. Jeff Doolittle. Jeff is a local executive coach. He's an organizational consultant. He is an author of Life-Changing Leadership Habits, 10 Proven Principles that will elevate people, profit, and purpose. He's also the founder of Organizational Talent Consulting and earned his doctorate in strategic leadership from Regent University and his MBA from Olivet Nazarene. So before I turn it over to Jeff, I just want to stress a couple Zoom etiquette rules. We are recording, like I said, this webinar, and we'll share that with you. Feel free to share it with others as well after the webinar concludes. If you need to conduct any business outside of today's webinar, please make sure to mute your microphone, turn off your camera. We know the Zoom etiquette rules by now, but we will also leave time at the end for questions. If you think of anything during the webinar, feel free to throw those questions in the chat. I know many of you submitted questions ahead of time as well, and we'll hopefully get to speak to some of those throughout today's presentation. So again, thanks for being here. Jeff, I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Danny, and thanks for the introduction. It's great to be with everyone. Um, Let me just start by saying I think most people can remember a manager who pushed them hard, right? But they never forget a manager that makes them feel loved. Again, as Danny said, I'm a executive coach, organizational consultant. My doctorate is in strategic leadership. I have 25, 30 years experience working with frontline C-suite to executive leaders to frontline leaders. And I'm also, in addition to what Danny said, I'm also a scientist by training. And so my hypothesis is that leadership habits are actually life changing. And my doctorate, as Danny said, is in strategic leadership. And with my last name, I just want to clarify it was not in veterinary medicine, although maybe it should have been. Maybe I should have been that Dr. Doolittle. But a big part of my life's work has really just been on helping leaders and elevating leaders, helping empower organizational excellence. And today's topic, I also want to go on record as saying it is not a soft or fluffy aspect of leadership. It's about research-backed leadership differentiator that really drives worthy performance. It creates life-changing experiences for you as a leader, for those you lead, for their organizations, and I believe we're all connected and for our communities. And today's workforce is facing extreme levels of disengagement, burnout, and distrust. And this topic is spot on for where we are in society. So I invite you to be present, be open minded. When you hear something that challenges maybe even a belief, or if you do, something that you hold, I ask that you get curious about why would someone say that? Why would the evidence point to something maybe different? But I want to start with some data and some red flags that I'm seeing in the workplace. Evidence is clear. Trust in the workplace is declining, and it has been for quite some time. According to Edelman, who has conducted a very large survey over 32,000 people across 28 different countries, evidence suggests that very few of us are willing to help, live near, or work with someone who we disagree with on something that's significant in their point of view. If we disagree on a point of view item, it's very unlikely that we're going to do these things. There are many other red flags in the workplace. This comes from Gallup, 22 Global Workplace Report. They found evidence to suggest that only 2 in 10, or actually 2 in 10, are rating their mental health as fair to poor. So out of our group here, we can expect some of us are really just struggling to get by. 3 in 10 of us are engaged in our work. That means that we're actually rowing in the same direction as everybody else in the team. But 7 in 10 of us are either just sitting on the boat, or some of us are actively rowing in the different direction than where we're trying to go as an organization or where your company's trying to go. We know that 5 in 10 of us are only doing the minimum required at work. I'm not going to ask who out of us is not doing their part of the work, but the reality is a lot of us are just showing up, doing the minimum of what's expected so we can go home and do the other things that we really love and things that we enjoy. And that's the reality in society that leaders are facing. And this is the reality in your workplace. So, in the research for my strategic leadership doctorate, what I discovered is that it's a little overwhelming and alarming. Just as numerous as there are definitions for a leader, I identified over 70 different leadership bad habits contributing to these workplace red flags. I wanted to know, why are these things happening? What's causing this? And what does the evidence and research say? Not to what do people say. I want to get past the smoke and the mirrors, but really dig into what does the evidence say? And unfortunately, there's lots of leadership bad habits that are contributing to these red flags. And I call them accidental habits because I don't believe leaders set out with intention to do this. Although, unfortunately, some of us just fall into these bad habits over time, and it creates these environments where we see these outcomes of trust and engagement in the workplace. So, as a doctoral student, I formed my hypothesis that, again, leadership habits are life changing, and that the greatest threat to your success and significance is not hiding in a report or data somewhere out there, but it's in these routine patterns of practice that are performed regularly in our life and that drift into the background, just like breathing. We don't think about it, but we do it. And habits are proven to play this really important role. There's been some really great books out there written on the topic of habits and how they influence everyday life, like Atomic Habits, and including the mental and physical aspects of our health. And beyond that, as leaders, these habits that you have actually influence the relationships, your level of happiness and connectedness and community, and the effectiveness and engagement of your employees, which translates into business results and outcomes. So, from that list of 70 leadership bad habits, I discovered that there's 10 life-changing leadership habits proven to elevate people, profit, and purpose. And today, we're going to be looking more closely at one of those topics that is the least discussed and often least understood life-changing leadership habit. In my experience, when I talk to people, this is the one that they go, "What? And are you sure?" And it's clear evidence around it's loving followers, leading with love. But I just want to stop and also say that people ask me, well, what's the most important topic? Am I promoting that this is the most important? The reality is that the most important life changing leadership habit for you, it depends on your own specific needs and style. If you want to discover your leadership aha, you can actually use this QR code, and it takes you to just a free assessment that gives you feedback on how you show up as a leader. And the assessment also then works in concert with my book, Life Changing Leadership Habits, to provide a kind of like a reading guide. So if you're busy, you can just jump to the parts that matter most to you. That's how it was designed. So yeah, you can grab that QR code, take that survey, and that'll help you find what your most important ahas are. But I want to dig into this concept of love. And love is not just a four-letter word. And you may be thinking, why is this guy that says he's a scientist talking about the word love? But in my doctoral studies over 4 years of strategic leadership, peer-reviewed evidence, I never encountered one article that didn't support the value of loving followers. Evidence suggests that it is a secret multiplying factor for your leadership and the results. And I can tell you that, just as I stated as I begin, I think we can all remember these leaders that have pushed us hard. I remember when I started my career in fast food, some of the leaders that pushed me really hard. But I can also remember these leaders that actually showed me love and how that transformed who I am. Great leaders love followers, and we all have an inner game and an outer game at play in our life as in life and leadership. What I mean is that we're taking actions as a leader, and we're often choosing between right and right, and what is quality and quantity, or good for the organization, or good for the employee. We're making these decisions, and just like the operating system on your phone, and I don't know what operating system you have on your phone, my iPhone here. I have no clue, but I can tell you this, that when that operating system gets behind its update, all of a sudden my apps don't work. All of a sudden videos don't play or something, I don't hear sounds. And I know I need to go in and update my operating system. Like for some reason it didn't update. But that your inner game quietly controls the outer game effectiveness of your phone, just like the inner game of who you are controls the outer game of who you are, show up and how you show up as a leader. Your values and virtues, the things that are who we are, influence how we make these decisions when there is no right or wrong. It's between right and right. And we have to make this decision and show up. So, our character strengths, again, quietly controlling who we are. One of the topics when I researched the value of love and this concept of love as a habit was the impact that it had on something called discretionary effort. And discretionary effort is one of the benefits that come from loving followers. It's really the holy grail of performance management. It's when employees go above and beyond what's expected to perform in ways that benefit organizational goals. So you have a team member and you have this team that you're leading, and all of a sudden, some of your team members do things that are unexpected. Say, for example, two retail associates are walking into work. Both of them are cashiers, right? And their job's not to put away carts, but one of them actually stops and puts away carts, although you never asked them to do that. But it's a value to your customers because now they don't have to dodge them in the parking lot and people have them when they come into your store. So, why is it that some people do these things that contribute to this benefit to the organization above what you ask them to do, and others don't? Others just do the minimum or don't even do that. What is that? Well, that's this concept of discretionary effort. And what we found from the evidence and the research is that this, when we demonstrate love to our followers, it impacts this, it increases this concept of discretionary effort. It increases when people are willing to do this. And in today's world, as a leader, there's no way you can tell people all the things they need to do. You need them to show up, find out what needs to be done, and solve things in real time for your organization. And so, all of these things, the discretionary effort, individual team performance, innovation, profitability, all these things drive growth for your organization. There are tremendous amounts of benefits for this topic. So, again, I wanted to start by saying this is not a fluff topic. This has a real unique benefit for you as a leader and for your organization. So, what do I mean by loving followers? Love is a word with multiple meanings in the English language. It's one of these, we say it all the time. I say, oh, yeah, I love that movie, or, I love that food, or I love my wife. I have all these ways that I use the word love. In other languages like Greek, there's several words for the concept of love, like selflessness and romantic or friendly or familial types of love. And I remember the first time I was working and I heard the concept that I needed to show love in the workplace, I thought to myself, man, I can barely love my family. I had a wife and children at the time, and I remember thinking, I don't have enough words to even communicate with them. Now you're telling me I need to love people in the workplace? I can't do that. I don't have that in me. And so I questioned that. And if you're questioning what we're talking about, you're not alone. I'm saying that's where I was too. And what I needed to do was understand, what does I mean by the word love? Because again, it has so many different meanings. And in the workplace, loving followers is just a desire and action taken for the good of others ahead of personal interest. And I really want to hit on, it's not just the desire, but it's taking action, and it's putting others ahead of our own personal interests. It's a character strength that changes how we think, how we feel, and then how we act in the workplace. Love, empathy, and compassion are oftentimes interrelated and confused, but they have distinct differences. And so, for example, I can have an empathetic understanding of my employees' feelings and where they are as a person when they showed up to work. And that's important for helping me know how to relate to them. But just because I have empathy doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. It just means that I understand where they are. I can still go ahead and do whatever it is that I want to do, but I have a choice to make. But empathetic understanding is just the beginning. Compassion, likewise, is this desire to help someone, and I want to show compassion towards them. Compassion is, though, a desire, and this idea of love is taking basically having the empathy and the compassion to put into place practices that unlock and are will the good of others ahead of your own action or your own benefit. So love changes and unlocks amazing results in the workplace. It's not just an idea. It requires us to compels us to do something and to be something different, not just to be who we are, but to be what is needed in that given instance. So let me give you some three ways you can recognize the presence or what I call virtues of loving followers from the life-changing leadership habits, and then also three ways you can recognize its absence. I call that in each of the habits, I say that they show up in the workplace and us as leaders across a continuum. We're not all virtuous, and we're not all have these vices out there as well. You likely fall in some sort of continuum across there. And there's practical ways you can demonstrate loving followers. And it's not I think sometimes people, again, confused on what the meaning is, also on how do we just apply this. So one way you can practice this is through a concept called servant leadership. Simply said, it's serving others first, leading with humility, showing up and listening, leading with humility, and reinforcing positive performance. When you see things that are done to benefit the organization, you take action and you reinforce that positive performance through reward and recognition. Likewise, the absence of love in the workplace can be observed and recognized in leaders that take a transactional leadership style. So, transactional leadership is where a form of leadership that most of us have experienced, or maybe at some point, where the view is, I give you a paycheck, so then you do what I tell you to do. It's a top-down, authoritarian kind of organizational talent performs best within a chain of command. So that's the thinking that it has, and therefore we motivate people through rewards and punishments. And that's how we get them to do what we want them to do, which is the transaction. Uh, the absence of humility, I say, is narcissism. It's not a direct one-to-one, but the absence of humility is characterized by this high self-involvement, where we think about ourselves. We have a fragile ego about ourselves. We can't accept the faintest criticism. That kind of narcissistic presence is a predictor of counterproductive workplace behaviors. When you see that in the workplace, we know that it leads to sabotage, bullying, they say sexual harassment, fraud, theft. It's just alarming, the research that around this type of presence of a leader and its impact in on the workplace. So we know narcissistic individuals can just project this image of effectiveness, even though they're viewed as arrogant. Oftentimes, we even still, knowing they're narcissistics, think they're going to be a great leader, but there's all kinds of negative impacts that come from this absence of love and putting ourselves first. Then there's tolerating poor performance. And I think this is one that gets really contagious, because performance is contagious, and leaders that tolerate poor performance are contagious. When you're walking down the hall and you see somebody doing something they shouldn't do, you have a choice to make. Viktor Frankl said it's this gap between an action and a response, and that's where leadership takes place, is in this gap. What are you going to do? You have this opportunity, now what? But when we choose to tolerate poor performance and we maybe don't say something, or when we see something, we know that then all of a sudden this performance is contagious, and the team performance falls as a result, because now there's new standards of what's acceptable and what's not. So poor performance results from these gaps in the performer's behavior and from leaders not leaning into the space of performance. So when we get practical about leadership and about how you can apply love, we can start to see there's certain things we can do that actually bring out the best in others and lean into this area of love. We know that in the absence of love, and the research is quite clear when we don't love others in the workplace, what happens as a result. For example, personally, a leader will often experience low quality team member relationships. So all of a sudden, you'll see when you see people not having that sense of practice of love, their team members don't get along well, or they don't get along well with their team leader. You'll see a lack of commitment within the team, and maybe even your career start to stall. These are all indicators that there's this absence of love potentially showing up. Also, within the workplace, we know that when there's an absence of love, the evidence is quite clear as well that there's increases in employee turnover because employees are not committed to the organization. They're more likely to leave. We know that decreased employee engagement, like 3 in 10 employees being engaged, increases counterproductive behaviors such as bullying, stealing, etc. And teams without this shared commitment on a common goal, that is just really just a group of people. So you really never leverage the benefit of a team. So by practicing love, you fix these issues. But when you don't, these are things that can break down the area of. Let me just talk a little bit about the commitment to a common goal, and expand on that point. Without it, again, I said it's just a group of people. If you want a modern story about the power of love and on team goals, its impact and results, you can watch the trailer for the Netflix documentary series called Medal of Honor. So there's my recommendation for this weekend or this evening. If you like documentaries, Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor is considered the highest medal of commendation presented in the U.S. by the U.S. military, and only a small fraction of the recipients are even still living that receive the award. To receive it, you have to have demonstrated extreme valor. So they just don't hand these out. These awards are very rare. And the trailer in this documentary series starts with an interview of one of these soldiers that survived, and they're recounting a story. And so there's a fallen soldier on the battlefield, and you hear this voice of the Medal of Honor recipient in the background saying, "In war, you're going to learn a lot." And I'm thinking you're going to learn about a lot about how to fight or how to kill others. But then he says you're going to learn a lot about how to love your brother. And it takes this deep sense of love for your brothers to step in front of a bullet for them. So, what would compel even people to the point of personal sacrifice within a team? Love. And love changes everything. It changes it to a very great extent. So, love is not, again, just this some fluff item, or not something that's going to have a direct impact. It changes everything. So, two quotes I like to use again to help us understand this concept of love. One's from Saint Thomas Aquinas, who is a priest, and the other's from a lawyer, Bob Goff. Again, it sounds like the beginning of a joke. I got a priest and a lawyer kind of a thing, but the priest says to love is to will the good of the other, and then the lawyer, Bob Goff, who turned philosopher and author, says selfless love is always costly. Fear can't afford it, pride doesn't understand it, and friends never forget it. And if you've experienced love in your life, you can relate to these definitions for sure. So let's talk about, when I talk about leading love, again, I'm not just talking about emotion for emotion's sake. I'm talking about it from a business value perspective. So, what creates business value? If you would, throw some possible answers into the chat. What do you think derives organizational safety, efficacy, health, employee retention? What is it that does that? Throw some ideas there into chat and I'll see what you say. I didn't cover that. I'm also an adjunct faculty, so I like to ask questions and do quizzes. Let's see. All right, come on. Let's get some answers out there. Is anybody typing? Danny, do we have any questions? Let's see. Okay, see ones came in. Here we go. Purpose. I like these. Purpose. Belief in the mission. Purpose of the organization. They definitely compel people into do these things and lead to these benefits. And what I would challenge is that if we keep peeling back behind the mission and purpose and connection, those are guiding documents by themselves. But but what they need is people that then follow them, right? That enact them and take them and put them into action. And I like to say that all results are the product of somebody somewhere doing something. And we need to have those mission, purpose, and values clearly defined so that we have people doing the right things, right? At the end of the day, we've got to get people to do these things. We need people that take and enact it. And we need to look at how we get people to perform. Now, this is just a very simplistic view of performance from behavioral psychology that looks at the model of performance. And we know it's essential for an organization. And so, what drives people, inputs are used by the performer to create results, and ideally, measures and feedback then are used to help fill in the gap and help the performer improve. But in the words of Edward Deming, he said, who's Edward Deming, by the way, is if you're not familiar with the quality movement, he's considered to be the founder of the quality movement in North America here. If you optimize one part of a system, you don't necessarily optimize the whole system. In other words, if we want to look at improving workplace performance and organizational outcomes, we need to look at what are the inputs like mission, vision, and values. We need to look at the performance. We need to look at measures, results, and feedback. We need to look at all of it. And said differently, in a little different way, the principle behind this, understanding performance, is that our world and that of our employees, your world, is perfectly designed to reinforce the results that you're achieving. The results and outcomes that we're getting in our organizations we're perfectly designed to get. That we have to change something for performance to change. And a good person in a bad system, the system wins every time. That's from Deming. We need to think about the system and how it's reinforcing. So again, I spent a lot of time synthesizing and researching practical ways that leaders can reinforce worthy performance and demonstrate love for employees. Again, the science guy in me is coming out, right? Looking at models and practices. And a tool I want to leave you with, a practical way to demonstrate your love for your team and for others, it comes out of the field of behavioral sciences and behavioral engineering. The behavioral engineering model it's a practical tool. You can apply it for the virtues and love of followers for you as an individual. You can look at it from diagnosing performance of others in the workplace. It's one tool I've again used with executives to frontline leaders. It's powerful for all of us to use. It was first introduced in the 1970s and it's been around, built on since then. But Thomas Gilbert is the one that put this together. And he suggested there's these basic 6 attributes that present desired performance. When desired performance happens, these 6 things need to be in place. The first 3, information, resources, and incentives, are external to the performer and are controlled by the leader. The leader has to provide these things. The last 3 are knowledge, skills, and capacity, are attributes that the employee controls and they have to bring to the performance as well. And the research says that if the first 3 are missing, it's likely that the number 6, the motivation, is lacking. But that we also know that training, sometimes people say, well, knowledge and skills, shouldn't the leader have to do that? Yes, they need to provide it. However, just because we all know, just because you go to a training class doesn't mean that you actually learn anything. I've sat through many of sessions and not taken anything from it because I'm thinking about something else, right? Nothing to do with the content of being presented. So that's where the employee has the key piece in it. They have to submit themselves and kind of practice through that to get the value. So these 6 things drive again the determining the will this desired performance happen. Expectations relate to having clear understandings of performance expectations and feedback. If you've ever been assigned a task without fully understanding what's expected, then you know what I'm meaning. You need to know what's expected of you to deliver good performance. Resources, this relates to having tools, equipment, and resources. It can be people, it could be tools like we think of that do your job. Being asked to task a calculation or equation without having a calculator would be similar to failure of resources, not having enough resources. Incentives, These can be monetary or a simple thank you and include what we call consequences, both positive and negative, perceived by the performer. When employees are paid the same, whether they do the good job or not, that's a form of failing in the area of incentives and consequences. Knowledge and skills, again, that's about the confidence and competence to do the job. Capacity is about the physical or emotional capacity to do the work. And then motives, again, are you intrinsically motivated to do the job and perform the work that's being required? So Gilbert said these six things need to be in place for us to achieve performance in the workplace. So my question for you, and just let's give this a try of application of this model. Considering your current job, I want you to use chat and vote. What's maybe the one thing that's needed to improve your performance? If I wanted to improve your performance today, which one of the following six things would actually help you the most? So here's the six, and now use chat and vote which one of these six would help you the most improve at your job. No right or wrong answer. You get to decide. Everybody, this is for everybody. So, okay, I'm seeing a lot of ones, three and a two, a lot of another couple threes, some a four. Okay, all right. Now, what evidence would say when we've done this in large groups, about 80% of the time it falls into the top three, and about 20% of the time into the bottom three. And there's, again, this is one way that you can sit down and just ask your team, and you can show that lead with love by asking them, what is the thing that would help you do your job better? And then when they say, like, clear performance and expectations, I would go back and I would follow up with, like Katie that said one, and I'd say, okay, Katie, so what's that? What is it that's needed? And then get a more detailed understanding of what is missing. Maybe it's a job description. Maybe it's a task assignment. Maybe it's a clear expectation of what good looks like. But it's literally this simple is the way you can apply this tool proactively. So this would be like something you could do one to one with a team member. You can do it in a large group as from a team meeting perspective to look at systemic type of issues across your team or across an organization. I also want to say, it's good for optimizing individual performance, change management. You can use it for root cause analysis, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. And then also you can use it one to one or in team environments. A lot of different ways. The key is once you then hear the heart of the employee, hey, here's what I need. Now it's just go out and do it. So it's a really great diagnostic tool, but it's intended then to be put into action. That's the loving part, right? It's converted from understanding then put into action. So when you do that, that's how you demonstrate love for followers because you're optimizing their performance, you're supporting their work, you're helping them have that successful day where they feel that they're winning, and you're helping by root cause, you're moving barriers that may be getting in the way of team performance or organizational performance. So it's that simple, and it's really can come out in a lot of different ways. Another way, if you're familiar with the quality movement. This is called a fishbone diagram, or the technical term, the Ishikawa diagram, from the guy that came out with this. But what you do is you take a problem and you put it into the fish head. They call that little square there at the beginning, and then you try to identify what is behind six different ways that are what could be driving that problem. In the quality movement, if you're familiar with this, you'll notice that I've substituted out the bones of the fish to align with Gilbert's grid. But in the quality movement, they use methods, machines, people, materials, measurement, and environment. So what I've done is I've blown out the people bone out into six different sources to look at it. So for example, if we want to look at it, maybe your employees, this is how you could use it as a root cause analysis. Employees not showing up to the workplace on time. Here you could go in and we could then look to say, what could we do to see what's happening under the information? We could start to ask some questions, and maybe we'd find that we need to start tracking on minutes who's in person and who's online and who's absent. Maybe we want to set an expectation for employees to start attending team meetings in person. That could be things we do. Maybe around resource-based solutions, we could start to look at, you know, what are we having meetings at reasonable times when people are free from other maybe reoccurring meetings or expectations that they have for things to get done. So we look at resources. Are they given the resources? We look at incentives. Maybe we could create an incentive of coffee for those that are in the office. But you know, you could start to look at this and see that if we start thinking about each of these different bones individually and really dive into those sources, we can start to identify what is causing why people are not showing up on time. Again, knowledge-based solutions, this is just gonna this model just repeats for each of the different sections, and capacity and motivation as well. So all of these are one way. Then you can, again, root cause analysis, and why, again, this translates into performance and outcomes for your organization, but it's a way of demonstrating your love to enable performance, which drives organizational outcomes in the workplace. And what I want to do at this time, I know I've been talking for a while here. I want to pause and open this up for questions. I received over 70 questions in advance of the session. So I'm not going to be able to get to all of those today. And I do want to get to some of those for those that are here on the call as well. But while you're typing up your question that you might want to ask, what I'd like to do is talk about a couple that I received. Some of the questions I received were about how do you practice leadership in complex contexts and challenging industries? In those environments, does this model work where you lead with love? And I just want to say again, leading with love is not naive, okay? It's a resilient way of leading, and life-changing habits are rooted in evidence that trust, purpose, and character are an antidote for these toxic kind of transactional environments. If you're in that kind of transactional world, um, this type of focus on trust and purpose and character is actually the antidote for making the change. And you want to start with being the change you want to see in the world, using Gandhi's quote there, and using some of the models. In my book, I go into some other additional tools like strategic foresight, trust building, coaching tools that could be used to help make more long-term cultural change. If you're in a role that has responsibility for culture, you could look at it through those lenses as well. Another group of questions I receive is, what if I'm not a manager? I'm not a leader. I'm more of an informal role. Well, first I would say leadership is not a title, right? You're not just a leader because you're given a title, and anyone can live out the 10 life-changing leadership habits. They apply. The evidence is clear. These apply in all aspects of our life. And influence, really, loving followers. This first one is about influence, and it's one of the that you can we could all take and apply, and we'll see benefits even without having formal authority. So how this could look when you're not in formal authority is recognizing, we talked about positive reinforcement, right? So let's say you're on a team and people on the team are doing something that you need them to do, but you're an informal leader within the team. What you can do is send them a thank you note, but copy in their leader. And that's one way to help benefit that employee. So you're showing love for that employee because they're doing something, again, that's benefiting the organization. And as a leader, you're recognizing that performance. You're not just accepting that as well, everybody should be doing that because they're a part of the team. You're calling it out. And so that positive reinforcement is a clear differentiator, and that's one way you could show love as an informal leader. So I've talked a little bit. Hopefully some questions have come in. Has anything come into chat? Nope. Nothing yet. Nothing in chat. Any questions
I
for
haven't
me?
seen anything. Yeah, and feel free to unmute if you'd rather share your question out loud in the group or put them in the chat. We do have some time to, yeah, get to some of the questions that you all have.
It's always about the time that we start to move forward that I know that people are typing. So maybe too, for those that are typing, I can put up here. This QR code is one way to download all the slides from today. So if you want to, you can do that and access the slides from the PowerPoint. I want to make those available to everybody. If you do that too, it also signs you up for my newsletter that I put out and with leadership tips and practices out there as well. So be just transparent with that. That's there for you. Looks like I did have a question come in. How do you balance leading with love and compassion alongside accountability? Yeah, so loving others is about relationships and results, and that's why I put in here the focus on even with the the performance grid that I showed from Thomas Gilbert. That six box grid is one way to focus on performance because I think most people think about, well, how to improve loving relationships would be about leading with love, but I wanted to show that it's also about holding people accountable and driving accountability. Just simply using that Gilbert's grid, asking your employees. So let's just say, I'm just assuming here, maybe you've got people not doing in the team things that are expected, but the way to do this with by leading by love would be to start with, okay, so let's identify what's missing. And you notice that the Gilbert's grid starts with a look in the mirror. What is it that I, as your leader, maybe are not giving you that would help you as a leader? And asking you then too, also, what do you need? So it's how we can do that. And in the area of accountability, and in my book, I get into this actual topic of accountability, um, because holding people accountable is really critical, and it is a life changing leadership habit. But it's how you do it. What I've seen, unfortunately, is you in organizations, you're either a sweatshop where people feel like they're getting beat over the head to tell what to do, or it's like a country club and no real traction is gained. People generate ideas, but then everybody has an idea, but no one does anything with it. And so how do you balance that? A key enabler is actually empowering people. As a leader, looking at what you do, your inner game of who you are and how you're showing up can help then balance the six levers for accountability. And there's in my book I get into there's six levers that you can use to help drive accountability. But yeah, leading with love is not soft. Leading with love is sometimes telling people this is not the right fit for you. And it, and saying you have to improve your performance in holding people accountable. Because if I had someone, again, performance is contagious. As a leader, I'm not leading with love if I allow that contagion to spread. We would never, like, if we had someone on our team we knew was sick with COVID, we'd never assign them to a team with a bunch of healthy people and say, okay, come in and work alongside them, and not say anything, right? We would do something because as a lead, that would just be that'd be terrible. So you can't do that. Same thing, realizing that if we have an employee that's not performing above expectations and meeting or exceeding expectations, that we as a leader are compelled to actually engage with them and to actually uh, do something that help them improve, or otherwise we're not going to we're hurting all the other team members. So I have to see my role as avoiding a difficult conversation is at coming in a cost, and it may come in a cost to others, and that's not leading with love because now I'm neglecting the others in the team as well. Yeah, love does require radical candor, and I get into that's one of the life-changing leadership habits is the idea of having difficult conversations, and I call it mastering difficult conversations because difficult conversations are difficult and you need to know as a life-changing leader you need to be prepared to engage into something that's difficult. I think that's why a lot of in this comment on radical candor, I think a lot of organizations avoid the talk of virtues and values like love because it's a little difficult. It's they don't feel prepared or equipped to do it, and so we don't know how to talk about a leader to a leader that's not demonstrating this in the workplace. And we need to get concrete, and it doesn't have to be a mushy topic. That's again my science background. I try to take a very practical approach to there's tools and processes, there's ways we can measure this, and ways we can implement it that have that effect. Yeah, being a life-changing leader and being a servant leader, demonstrating radical candor, it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost to you as a leader, and because you're not able just to say, "I'm just going to be who I want to be," but I'm going to be. I need to. I'm going to be who you need me to be, and that's going to cost me something. And that is loving loving others comes at a cost, whether you're stepping in front of a bullet for your brother or you're speaking up to a leader that's been hurting others in the workplace, it comes at a cost to you. Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see, what impacts our capacity to love our followers and others? So some of this is that there's an inner game to this. So, if you're like, well, let's take trust, being trustworthy. There's how credibility, how credible are you on a topic? How frequently are consistent are you in what you say and what you do? Um, these those things and your humility, do you listen to others or do you put your way forward or not, all impacts your ability to be considered trustworthy. So the inner game of who you are uh, impacts the outer game of how you show up and your ability to actually to love others and love followers. Some people don't even again think that this is the right thing you should do. And so I tried to start with the evidence as to what got me to this point of why leading with love is so important for us to understand. But so I think some of it's lack of understanding. Some of it is some of us are not wired to do this and there's some changes we need to make. Like maybe we're narcissistic and we need to become a little less narcissistic and focus a little humility. And the good news is, like Star Wars and Yoda said, just because you head down the dark path doesn't mean you're there forever. This is when you can change. They are habits though, and habits require a proven practice for how you do that. In the book, I get into that, but there's ways you can do it. So, what impacts our capacity to love followers? Maybe first starting with, do we recognize that where we are not doing it? And then two, understanding what it is, how we can apply it. And again, there are assessments, proven tools out there you can use to help measure and understand and get feedback. 360 tools are powerful for improving your capacity to love because it gives feedback from others and on how you're actually showing up in the workplace. When there's a disconnect between intent and impact, where our intent is maybe to love others, but yet the impact is it's not happening. So 360s can help reveal that. So there's an inner game moderator as well. Let's see. Are any suggestions for creating mission, vision, goals, values within a team when they're not clearly defined by the organization? That's really a little tangential to where I go with the book. But I don't have I don't think anything right off the top of my head other than saying these. Well, I guess I'll throw out there in today's world. When you go down this road, I would start with the mindset of a positive mindset. So there's a framework called the appreciative inquiry, if you want to look it up. And appreciative inquiry starts with the idea of first identifying what are your strengths in your organization, what are the things that you're good at, and then asking people to dream about the future of what they would want it to be, and then from there co-creating the future. Unfortunately, a lot of times we go with SWOT analysis, which SWOT is nothing wrong with that. We need to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. However, we over index, I think, on weaknesses as a culture. We tend to go drill into what's wrong. And if we're always talking about what's wrong, we're never talking about what's right or what can be. And words shape worlds. How you talk about something is how it happens or transpires. So when you go down this road of creating the mission, vision, and goals and values, they need to be actual. It's okay to be a little bit aspirational, and that's where it should come from, the dreams. Start with, listen to your employees and those around you. Is what are their dreams? Ask them that. And I actually like to use the word dream. Now, if you're working with engineers, they may go, I don't dream, I live in reality. But I would call that more foresight. Ask them to engage in strategic foresight. And that's another way of saying, let's look into the future, and then co-create it together. Let's pick the things that matter most, make those our goals, our values, and then let's identify what we need, where we need to focus first, and build a plan around it. And AI, appreciative inquiry, not AI, artificial intelligence, provides a framework for how you can do that. In the book, I talk about this as a life changing leadership habit about strengths based thinking. We need to approach these attributes and leadership from a strengths mindset instead of a deficit mindset. I think in our culture now more than ever, we don't need to talk about what's wrong. We need to start talking about what's right and what we want it to be, because that will compel a much better outcome. All right. I think I got through those questions. So
Yes, I haven't seen any more come in the chat. Does anyone else have a question? Feel free to throw that in the chat. Unmute if you'd rather. Give folks.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's quite like well formed, so bear with me.
sure.
What like from your research and whatnot, and thinking about leading with love,
Hmm.
have you uncovered anything about like how that relates to trauma with like people showing up into the workplace from previous traumas or like triggering trauma experience, like a response that kind of makes people get quiet or numb and like try to like pull them out of that. Is there anything that kind of connects those two things?
Yeah, I mean there is a connection. So there was a guy that wrote a book, overcoming the what is it overcoming the overcoming downsizing, and it's the trauma related with downsizing. I can't get his title quite right, but he did. There's a back when there was a lot of downsizing going on within organizations. He did research into what's happening, and from a psychological perspective, it's very much a traumatic experience, and uh, how leading with love is one way forward, that he gets to, he doesn't call it that, but if you look at the attributes of what he would recommend for how you could avoid this in the future, it stems from this idea of love, but not, I think sometimes again where we over go wrong with love is maybe on the thinking that it's always the gentle, soft side and not on the accountability side as well, and holding you accountable, as and there. So there, yeah, there's I have seen that as a trauma in the workplace, and a correlation. But not I haven't studied that aspect a lot, but there are people that are looking at trauma and how it shows up, and I would say too, in my socialization of this topic and even calling it out, there are some people that wonder about the term love because of the what when I say selfless love, what does that mean, and how do you get clear on it? But it's again the I think the meaning is the key differentiator when you dig into that. So I don't sorry I couldn't be more helpful on that, but if you want to
Um,
email me this topic, I will find the book and pass it on to you. That you might find that interesting.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for this, for just outlining your research. And I think this is just like really important and like important work that you're doing. And it's important for us to be normalizing this and talking about this. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you for sharing this. It's been really
Absolutely.
helpful.
No, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Absolutely. I think it's one of the least talked about topics, and yet the evidence is so clear on this. It's like, and yet we just avoid it. Yeah. Um, Someone else posted. I see. What is a good resource to look at for learning more about appreciation analysis? Oh, appreciative inquiry, I think is what you mean. Appreciative inquiry. Search appreciative inquiry. Again, email me. I'll send you the books. But you can Google. You can pull it up. There's some. the founder of it, and again, I'm not going to be able to give you his name, that invented the approach to find it and wrote about it. He's written books. There's a short take video like of a hotel that was used for one of the first applications of AI in the workplace, and they made it into a really neat little video you can watch, like a 5 minute video that helps explain the concept. If you email me, I'll send you links to that, and if you can't find it. And Danny just dropped my email in the chat. Thanks, Danny. So feel free to do that. Be glad to help you. Yeah, but appreciative inquiry, I think, is part of the medicine that we can start using to change workplaces, by looking at things from a positive perspective. Strength, I call it strengths based. In my book, I get into how you can, as a leader, live out strength based leadership. And a appreciative inquiry is one of the tools that I recommend, and I explain it briefly in my book, um, as well as I give you two others. Thank you, Sherilyn, for dropping in
Excellent.
information there.
Yes, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This has been so wonderful to learn from you, Jeff. Thank you for your time and your expertise and bringing just so much good knowledge and information to us. And thanks for all of you who attended. We are so grateful that you're staying engaged with all of the offerings we have. We're going to have more webinars coming up next semester. So stay tuned and keep an eye open for that. We'll be exploring some more topics around career. Kyle has thrown in the Alumni Career Resources website into the chat, so please visit that if you are looking for additional resources. And like I said, we will have the recording to you and Jeff's slides as well available, so you can revisit the conversation at any time. So yeah, thank you all. Enjoy the holiday season and the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.